Best, the ABSA Off-Road Championship, and fast-track yourself through the race with vehicle and asset finance from ABSA. Today, tomorrow, together. The Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race, round 4 of the ABSA Off-Road Championship, is a race that stretches vehicles, crews and drivers to the limit and then beyond. The desert takes no prisoners, and in the Botswana capital, Gaborone, the organizers have set up a route which traverses some of the most varied terrain the drivers and navs have experienced in years. It's a grueling but fair route. The desert is a place where survival is uppermost in one's mind. To do that, drivers have to look after their engines and preserve their cars at all costs. As the 2008 ABSA Off-Road Championship Series reaches its halfway mark, teams are hard at work preparing vehicles who are ready to do battle in the Toyota Desert 1000 race. Hello everyone and welcome to our preview of that race. I'm Arnold Gertz. But not only will we preview the big one in the desert, but we'll also tell you how suspensions work on these tough off-road vehicles. Wami Andad, manager of Toyota Motorsport, obviously wanting to do well at the Toyota Desert Race is top of the list.
That is absolutely priority now for the next 10 days until we get there. Long, hard event, throws everything it can find at you, from sand, rocks, bush, dust, heat, cold, you name it, it happens there.
But Marc Grenier has already proved this year that he's now learnt how to win. What else does he still have to learn out there on the road?
I think what he needs is just a little bit of luck, and then he can be in front and finish in front. Better than last year where he made it up until about 50 kilos from the end, and then there was this stray donkey that would pay to his chances. Better luck this time.
But it also seems like your crew have really also learned to master how to get the cars absolutely spot on right.
I think they're a little bit better than last year, yes, and it takes a lot of work, and you only go little bit by little bit by little bit. Competition is very stiff, and you don't make big steps. There's no way that you can do that. So we keep on chipping away at the block.
And you've got a new man on the team, and he performed admirably, even though he turned it over twice, was still able to get to the line. That says something about him.
Yes, I think he's done his roly-polies now, so this time we'll get through without any bent roofs. And he took it intelligently. He didn't try to show everybody how to drive. So this is a long race, and I think he will make it to the end and be quite high up.
From our vantage point, from a television vantage point, the last 3 years has really proved that it has become very tight. The racing is tighter than ever.
Yes, this is almost a 1,000-kilometer sprint race because it's flat out from beginning to end. You cannot let up. If you lose a few minutes, you won't make it up. There's no way that you can do that.
Why do you think it's become so tight? Why has it become so competitive lately?
Some good drivers. The drivers really chase each other. And I think the vehicles are also very similar. They're all very competitive, and it's now up to the crew, the driver and the navigator, to really make it first to the end of the 1,000 Ks.
Let's talk technical stuff for a little while. The suspensions on the production car vehicles and the SPs in particular, how do they work?
That can be complicated, but let's try and make it simple. The suspension connects the wheels to the chassis and the body. That's the main purpose. And then it transfers all the forces from the contact patch to the car to make it go forward, brake, turn. It puts some comfort in. You need a bit of comfort, but not too much in racing. But essentially, you have 4 contact patches about the size of a saucer that carries this 2-ton vehicle at high speeds. And you have to transfer the forces from the 4 contact patches of the tire into the vehicle to make it work.
And obviously suspension is one of the major things. It's what we often hear, that was the biggest problem, and that's why guys retire.
It's because it takes such a hammering, and it's a balancing act. Everything is a compromise in vehicle engineering, and you have to have the right portions of everything. You can make them very thick, very strong, use unobtainium material, but that's not allowed by the rules, and then you end up with very high weight, and the weight is also an enemy. So it's a balance between weight and the forces that you have to transmit.
Now, you've been in the motorsport for a long time. How have the suspensions changed over the last, let's say, 10, 15 years?
not too much. You cannot reinvent the wheel. But yes, having said that, things have become a lot more refined. The dampers and the springs are a lot more refined, the linkages are a lot more refined, and as we carry on, we learn lessons and we improve on what we have. It's small steps. We keep on going forward.
And as far as suspension is concerned, that obviously relates straight back to car setup for each one of the drivers as well, doesn't it?
Not so much. There's small differences between drivers. There is driver preference, but they tend to be very much the same at the end of the day.
And does that differ, do you know, from special vehicle setup as compared to with the production cars?
Hugely different. Special vehicle is completely different. They can go over big rocks in a straight line at very high speeds because they have large suspension travel. They talk about 24 inches and things like that. In the commercial vehicle, the bucket rules, the front suspension travel is limited to 250 millimeters and the rear is limited to 300 millimeters. You also have, in the normal bucket setup, you have more weight on the front than on the rear, whereas the specials have all the weight on the back. So yes, the suspension setups are hugely different for the two vehicles, two different animals altogether.
Setup is always a crucial part of any racing formula, and more so now that it's becoming so competitive. You know, we spend a hell of a lot of time trying to get the car set up properly, and you know, that you look at a shock thinking that it's just a couple of tweaks here and there. It's not as easy as that, you know, especially in off-road, because you've got so much travel. You know, you've got such a wide window that you have to play within. And to get the balance right within that window is not easy, because you always gain a bit here and compromise there, and that's how we've sort of found that, you know, it's been tough to find that happy medium.
In the opposition camp, Nissan, the feeling is much the same. Car setup is everything, especially for the desert race.
Oh, very, very important. I'll tell you what, especially on this race, you know, you forget how rough and tough it can be, you know, and it's definitely not for this event. And the suspension takes a lot of pounding. And as I say, driving there at the back now and seeing how the guys chewed the road up in front of us, it's unbelievable that the suspension can stay in one piece, and then that a lot of cars are still finishing.
And Hannes, how important will suspension setup be for the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 desert race?
We'll have to work a bit on going into the sand, you know. If you go too soft and you get a lot of axle tramp, then you don't get traction, you know. So we'll probably change the suspension a bit to the next event, you know. And I think that's what everybody is basically doing.
Does Nissan run a different type of suspension compared to Ford or Toyota?
I think we're very similar, you know. We've got basically the same shocks, and you know, all what the driver wants to have his shock set up, you know, and that's going down to you know, the setup with what the driver wants.
And how do you like your car setup, Hannes? Is there a secret?
I've worked with Glenn and them, and Duncan do a lot of testing as well, you know, and I basically we're all going basically on the same, you know. We can go a little bit harder, you know, Glenn make a change if I want it, you know, but we're very, very close to the same.
The suspension is just about everything. You know, the cars are so equal. They all run with a restrictor, so we all got very, very similar power. The brakes are all exactly the same. The diffs are exactly the same. The suspension and the travel is all exactly the same. So a lot of it gets down to the actual setup of the car, the way you set up the shock absorbers and the suspension. So it's ultra important.
Staying in theme, Neil, are there major differences in the various camps as far as setup is concerned?
I think we're all similar, and I don't think any of us know exactly what the other people have got. We've all got our own little trade secrets and things like that, but as I said, we've all got to run the same travel, and the layout of the suspension is very similar, so it gets down to the setup of the shock absorber and the make of the shock absorber.
For the special vehicles, shocks and suspension setup is even more crucial. We dropped in at Zarco.
Hendrik, the Zarcos are doing exceptionally well. How come you got involved with building cars?
10 years ago, I raced with John Lambert in a beam car. We decided we needed to upgrade. We looked at American vehicles, extremely expensive. And I got involved designing a vehicle, three-dimensionally CAD-CAM, and hence 2003 we built the first vehicle. Now, 5 years later, for the first time, we're leading the championship.
But you're a CA. It's a great departure for a man who works with figures and books.
Yeah, I know, I'm a CA. Working with figures is quite boring sometimes, and this is a passion. I really love the sport. When it's in your blood, you can't do nothing about it.
And it's fun, obviously.
Extremely fun.
What makes the Zarcos different to all the other cars that are out there racing?
I think first of all, I try to stick to metric components. Metric components is readily available in South Africa. It makes the maintenance more affordable. The other difference is that I use an extremely strong and elongated steel, and it makes my chassis extremely strong. And we seem to be very successful. We've never had a chassis failure, nor have we had any suspension failures.
Talk about suspension. That obviously on the specials are absolutely vital for success.
Yes. On our suspension, we try to achieve a progressive slowdown of the shaft speed. It gives you the ability to go very, very fast over extremely rough terrain, and the suspension gives us the advantage over the rough terrain to go extremely fast and quite comfortable.
And with your vehicles too, you have the camber, if you like, tilt, which makes a huge difference as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Right in the outset, I decided to design the camber tilt into the vehicle, especially for the turning and in the cornering. It gives you more surface on the soil and gives you better handling through the corner.
When you talk about car setup, I assume with the SPs that's one thing. With the specials, again, it's a few more degrees, isn't it?
Yes, I think car setup in our sport is very important. You have to make sure that the suspension can accommodate the speed and can adapt to the speed that you want to travel. In our vehicles, we have multiple adjustments that can be done. Camber, caster, on the shock, there's a lot of adjustments that can be done. And we seem to have gotten the formula right. It's working.
And obviously, various different drivers have different ideas about how it should be.
Yes. Through all my customers, with each one, there is a different requirement. We had the test session yesterday with an international driver, and he immediately found the vehicles to be too soft. For his conditions, he wants them a little bit harder, and yeah, we have to adjust to each customer.
Let's talk for a second or two about why the SPs right now are slightly faster than what the specials are. What are your thoughts?
First of all, I think we should get a bit better drivers.
Careful.
And I think the 4x4 traction out of the corner gives them the advantage. I believe that top end is not that important, but acceleration is more important. And the four-wheel drives out of the corner gives him a little bit of 1-2 seconds acceleration improvement, and but we're working on it. We'll get there shortly.
The car that you're selling to someone who'll be racing in Africa has got windscreens. Do you think that will take off in off-road in South Africa?
Maybe in the longer term. I found it very pleasurable to drive yesterday. The windscreen makes the cabin enclosed, less wind in the inside, less mud in the inside, and perhaps in the long run it will give us another advantage, or another second or two per kilometer to improve the speed.
Now, lastly, you sitting very pretty with the Sulwalds really doing Zarco very proud. They've obviously got a great chance of pulling off the national championship come the next 5 races.
It's very early days. I think that it's very early. There are some changes coming. I know that they are perhaps changing vehicles this season. I think it's early days.
But the Sulwalds come into their own when the kilometers add up. They'll be there.
The desert race is always a hard race. I mean, it's a long race, so you need a little bit of a different mindset when you go there. And yeah, well, obviously we would like to do good. I think Cully will be using his new car. He's bought a new bat, Spec 4. So we'll see what happens. I plan to use I'm also building a new car, a Zarco, but I don't think it will be ready for the desert. So we'll use the current car for the desert.
Yeah, I was saying to my guys, I think I'm all built for a 200-kilometer race. So, no, the desert race is It's a totally different race. You handle it, you approach it differently than any other race, being 1,000 kilometers. But yeah, I mean, after one finish, one is very optimistic that anything can happen.
For motorized racing, an SP has been a big change.
A huge difference. You know, they all got very similar horsepower and the cars are very similar. I mean, it's all about driver and shock absorbers really, you know. So it is critical, and that's why we put a lot of effort into the car and trying to get it set up. And I think that's why Alfie had while he was running, he got some good times. And we'll go back to the drawing board and we'll do some more testing and we'll hopefully get the car a little bit better. But he said he was happy with the car, and I think the times are showing it. So maybe in the desert we can bring out the Motorrad SP and get a good result.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, going the extra mile to get you financed. Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, going off the beaten track to find solutions.
Ford and Toyota will be hoping the law of averages catches up with Nissan in the production vehicle category of the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race, round 4 of the ABSA Off-Road Championship in Botswana. Perennial champions Nissan have won the prestigious event 6 years in a row, and Toyota in particular would love to chalk up a long overdue victory on their event. They came close last year via Mark Cronje and Chris Birkin in a factory Castrol Toyota Hilux, and will be hoping that this year a Toyota crew will indeed do the trick. Factory support for Cronje and Birkin will come from Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton, a 4-time winner of the Desert Race in a second works Castrol Toyota Hilux. For Taylor, his second appearance since replacing Bevan Bertolt in the Castrol Toyota lineup could come as a culture shock, but he is fortunate in being able to call on Houghton's vast experience. After scoring their first super production class win on the Eastern Cape 500, the Cronje-Birkin combination will have high hopes of a Botswana win. There's no doubt that Toyota Hilux V6 is competitive, and Toyota will be hoping the dollop of luck always needed to win an event like the Toyota Kalahari Desert Race will come their way. There is also very strong support for the two factory crews from the consistent Chris Visser, Japie Baardenoor's Castrol Toyota Hilux, and Hugo and Jaap de Bruin in the Micron Excel Toyota Hilux, who were early frontrunners in last year's event. Both teams are experienced and enjoy desert race conditions. Also out in a Toyota Hilux V6 entry will be George and Sharon Parkhuizen in the Rurikon colours, and Jaco Swanepoel and Keith Solomon in the IDM Cement Hilux. Both crews have made a quantum leap from Class E, and their primary aim will simply be to make it to the finish line. As ever, the Nissan challenge is substantial, with 3 crews all capable of winning. Leading the charge will be reigning drivers champion Duncan Foss for the 2nd year in a row. He will have a stand-in co-driver. Ralph Pitchford again has overseas commitments, and young Louis Weichelt again steps into the breach in the Sasol Nissan Navara. Last year, Richard Leake replaced Pitchford and landed a record 8th desert race win. Former champion Hannes Grobler and Jean Moore are welding into a solid combination. Their advantage is that there is nothing you can teach Grobler, who first won this event way back in 1984, about the Toyota Desert Race. The highly competitive Norwegian Ivar Tollefsen and Briton Quinn Evans complete the Nissan lineup. There is, however, doubt about Evans making the trip to Africa, and reigning co-drivers champion Francois Jordan is standing by. There is also nothing you can teach veteran Ford crew Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer about the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race. Woolridge has won here 3 times, twice with Scholthammer, and experience and the solid reliability of the Ford Ranger makes them very good bets this year for victory. Mark Ferguson and Craig West in the second factory Ford will be another crew who will be happy to make it to the finish, as will Kobus van Tonda and Rian Guapa in the Unifreight Ford Ranger. Desert Race veterans Alfie Cox and Henny ter Steege in the Motorrad SP will be looking for their best result of the season, and experience is also a trump card for them. After missing the recent Nissan Sugarbelt 400, the father and son team of Harold and Tian Kun will be back in action in the ex-Barker Land Rover BMW. A finish will be at the top of their agenda. 2 wins this season have taken Kutsiela Beskagni and Johan Gerber in the Raconics Nissan Hardbody to the top of the Class D Championship. This is also their sort of race, but there are some tough challenges. Chris de Plooy Jr. and Henk van Vuren in the RFS Toyota Hilux will have thrown their hat into the arena, while Henry and Maurice Matten in their Ryobi Nissan Hardbody won the class last year. Reigning Drivers' Champion Cliff Weichelt and Jimmy Goch in the N1 4x4 Toyota Hilux will be looking for a return to form, as will Ramon Besaidnout and Stefan Locke in their Toyota, who've had a miserable time of it this season so far. 2 wins have also given Yanni Visser, brother of Chris, and Yorks LaRue in their Team Barbaspan Toyota Hilux a comfortable lead in Class E. The desert race is meat and drink to Visser and LaRue, but they could be troubled by the factory Ford racing pair of Jack Peckham and Lucio Santoro. Dewald van Breda, now partnered by Pierre Muntz in a Toyota Hilux, will be having his first taste of the desert race, and it will be an eye-opener. While Thomas Rundle and Brian Roberts in the Baden Tyre Services Nissan Hardbody will be out to end a disappointing run. Dion Fente and Ian Palmer in their 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux will also be looking to build on an encouraging Nissan Sugarbelt 400 result. Experienced Rob Gurney and rookie Paul Gonlag could also come into the reckoning. It will however need a big effort from a crew which has made a late start to the season. Foss and Pitchford have 2 wins already in 08. Will they make it 3 out of 4? Manufacturer's race is still wide open. Nissan has just a 2-point lead over fellow Japanese giant Toyota, while Ford is 10 points back. It will be a thrilling side contest. All the ingredients are in place too for a cracker of race in the special vehicle category on this year's Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race. A combination of tight championship positions and contrasts in style set the scene for what is likely to turn into an intriguing race. On top of that, there is the traditional desert race sting in the tail to take into account. In the overall and Class A championship, only 4 points separate Karl Heinz and Quinton Sulwalt in their Sulwalt Racing Zarko, last year's winners, and former South African champ Terence Marsh and Pieter Groenewald in the Regent Racing Bat. Both teams have a measured approach to their racing, and the desert race will be their cup of tea. Herman Sulwalt and Paul Helberg in a second Sulwalt Racing Zarko will also fancy their chances, as will 06 winners Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco Bat, and co-driver turned driver Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the second Regent Racing Bat. No one wins the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race on the first day, but there are some charges in the field who provide the race with some fascinating contrasts. Leading that brigade are the likes of reigning champions Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman in the Motorrad Bat, and Nissan Sugarbelt 400 winners Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen in the second Atlas Copco Porter. Both crews resurrected their championship hopes on the Sugarbelt and will be looking to carry their renaissance a step further. Brandon Harkes, partnered by 8-time Desert Race winner Richard Leake in the second Motorrad entry, is also a charger. And Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the Total Porter are due for a win. Veterans Nardis Alberts and Colin Hunter in the Rapsa Bat jump back to form on the Nissan Sugarbelt 400, and Peter Ruthven and Deval Boshoff will be looking for a solid performance in their Roacon Bat. Former winner Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar in the Century Property Development CR1 will be looking to get to the end, and Colin Matthews and Alan Smith in their bat, together with Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell in the Gibson Plant Hire Bat, are good outside bets. The scene for a good race is also set in Class B, where tight championship battles add a little interest to proceedings. Lo de Brain, reunited with Rudy Brits in the Roacon Bat, leads the Drivers' Championship. The younger crews, however, are up against some wily old campaigners. The desert race is the sort of event veteran Gil Nel, partnered by Dion de Kock and the Luke Africa Zarko, relishes. Fez Besaidnout and Johan de Bruin in their Adenko Bat also have plenty of experience and will know how to pace themselves. Jan Kraai and Tito Vogt in the Keymax Bat returned to form on the Nissan Sugarbelt 400, and Simon Beckett and Steve Harris together in the Century Property Developments Bat had a good result in KZN as well. The form book in Class P, which has replaced Class S, has been turned upside down. Reigning Class S champs Richard Schilling and Chris Davies in the A-Scow RS have yet to finish a race this season, and Nick Gosler and Richard Carolyn in the Men's Health International Raceco have not fared much better. KZN crew Don Thompson and Don Blakey in their Zarko have come from nowhere with a win and a second, giving them a comfortable championship lead. Brothers David and Gary White in their Rokon bat and Johan and Etienne Besaidnout in their Adenko bat have also won the season and will be brimming with confidence. All told, it points to some really great racing. But you cannot buy experience. On this basis, the likes of Schilling and Davies and Gosler and Carolyn can be expected to bounce back after disappointing starts to the season. The Sulwalds, Cully and Son Quinton have a 4-point advantage over former champion Terence Marsh and Groenewald, while Herman Sulwald will be chasing his brother all the way, just 16 points in arrears. The program in and around Gaborone will be chock and block full of great racing over an exhausting 1,000 kilometers. If you can get there, be there. If you don't, we'll report back from Gaborone. Until then, you keep it on the road, we'll keep it off-road.
That was the ultimate test, the ABSA Off-Road Championship. Now fast-track yourself with vehicle